Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. Okay, welcome everyone to this episode of the Peace and Possibilities podcast. My guest today is someone who is a pretty special person in my life. She and I met, we were colleagues several years ago, and I actually never met her in person until probably we were colleagues for a couple of years maybe at a conference, because she lives in another country and I'm here in the United States. And when we met, it was at this really cool conference, and we were both just really excited about what we were seeing and learning, and we just got to talking. And I knew when I left that conference that day that I was going to be keeping in touch with her. Even I think the first time I heard you at in a meeting I was at one time, and I wanted to learn more about you, and we've kept in touch ever since. And her name is Vikki Leach, and she is a phenomenal leader in the inclusion and diversity space, and has done a lot of work with that topic and so many other things. So I'll let her talk more about what she does. But so thank you for joining me, Vikki. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for asking me too. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Good. Me too. So let's start off with the first question, which is, so I know you have a, executive leadership position and have for several years in that space, that diversity and inclusion and diversity space for a long time. And I know that you were really passionate about it and all kinds of different topics. Did you always see yourself when you were going through school and growing up? Did you always see yourself being passionate about these things, or did your life take a different path when you got into the corporate world? I actually don't know that, so I'm curious if I know.
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up, inclusion and diversity wasn't really a profession. But of course, if you look at the traits and the skills and the passion that sits behind that, I look back and think, I've always had it. I've always wanted to achieve something. I've always wanted to empower other people. Just love watching people flourish and thrive. And I guess that's, when I look back when I grew up, there's three big things for me. One was I knew I always wanted to achieve something big. And that's nothing really to do with financial big or status big. It's just something I wanted to achieve. And I guess that the big influence for me when I was growing up, my mum had a business, and I was very much part of that business. So I worked I worked and lived as a child in a very commercial environment. But I also had a really big thing as well for myself, which was my sport. And for those sports people out there, or people who understand a hobby or a passion like something like sport, the passion that you have, the drive that you have to want to win or lose, obviously sometimes, the teamwork that goes with that, it truly lives out some of your values, and then you become actually very clear from a very early start what makes you get up in the morning, and what makes you really want to achieve or succeed in something.
Ooh, that's so cool. I didn't realize you had, that was one of your big passions growing up, but it's interesting because the parallels that, because of all the people I've talked to so far, everyone has different hobbies and interests aside from what their career is, hopefully. But it's funny that not funny, but interesting that you saw that the parallel for you to empower people and inspire and get people energized about doing what they're doing is because you were feeling that way when you were performing with sports and school and stuff. I'm not surprised to hear that, but I haven't had anyone else explain it that way. So that's pretty cool. Are you there?
Yeah. I'm
Okay,
still
okay,
here.
okay. So so you were, when you studied in school and university, what did you end up majoring in that got you either to where you are now or got you started on that path? Or were you just like, I'll just try this and then it completely morphed into something else?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Julie, because, everything that I've said, I think what something like sport gives you is the drive and the work ethic and the not giving up and seeing things to the end. But I also think the exposure to life early on for me was the people I played sports with, and what goes with sport is equality, fairness. It's ruled, isn't it? It's governed by a whistle or a timekeeper, or so there's rules that you abide by all the time, and I never really never really appreciated how much that had a major influence to the drive and the passion that I have for equality and inclusion, especially inclusion, because it just simply goes back to my purpose and values. That is about, it's about fairness, right? I probably Funny enough, I probably blame my two brothers as I grew up, and I used to remember saying, "It's not fair. Why did you win? It's not fair." And having two sort of boisterous brothers, I think really made me realize that it I was always fighting for fairness and equality. So it's funny, even me as a woman, even sort of being brought up with two, pretty extroverted brothers. There was no real differentiator between girl and boy, and I had the same upbringing as them. So, and of course, my mother was a successful businesswoman. So, for me, at a really early age, I was quite naive to the separation that you get now in terms of inequality. And I remember when I graduated and went into my first corporate job, and I just didn't get it. And that was because of my naivety. I did not get why there was such inequality in the workplace. And I just wasn't exposed to it. My sport, there was people from all diverse backgrounds playing in my team. Everyone was playing in my team. They were not from my upbringing. They were not from my school. And then you go into the workplace, and there's just people, diverse groups everywhere. But it looked so unequal, and I guess that's where I really clashed, probably with my first time with my purpose and my values.
Hmm. That's so interesting that I love that you were naive about it, which is why you were probably successful with what you were doing when you were growing up with sports and school. Like when I think that's one of the things that ends up making people more successful. Like, oh, I'll just do this and it will be good, or I can just be equal. I can be just as good as that boy. When you're naive to it and no one's telling you that you're not less than or whatever, you perform better because you're not worried about that injustice. But when you said you get into the work world and you see it, and you're like, wait a minute, oh, this is more. I didn't even know this was a thing, and
Yeah,
now you want to do something about it, but you want to do something about it because you had such a good experience when it wasn't even a factor.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I really sort of recommend to anybody that that sort of early age, it's when you are shaped, and take that and embrace it and go back there and really think about what shaped you, and we all have very different relationships in life, and I look back and I think, the people around me, the exposure I had, and the involvement I had growing up shaped my values, and it's super important that we go back to those times and really challenge ourselves. Why do we behave the way we behave now today, and how does my behavior impact others? What am I doing? What experiences have I had that has made me behave the way I behave today?
I think it's so important to do that because then you can be more helpful to whether you have a team of people or you're on your own in your own business. when you understand and you're just more self-aware and you have that emotional intelligence, it's easier to help yourselves, which is really what most people want to do anyways. Help yourself, help other people, help yourself and all of the people around you to say, like, this is your behavior is impacting someone this way, but you can't do any of that until you understand yourself and why you do what you do, the lessons you learned, and why you were shaped the way you're shaped. I think it's so important. I think you can do that in lots of different ways, but I would encourage people at any age, because some people say, well, this is how I am now. It's like, but if you really understood it, and you can have a shift, it doesn't have to be life altering. It could just be one little thing and say, I didn't realize I did that. Or talking to people about human behavior and why people do what they do, just to understand yourself a little bit better. It's so valuable. And so I think maybe underutilized is the right word, but it's just not something. I think people are always striving to achieve more instead of saying, being more introspective, looking inward and saying, wait, why am I interested in that, getting to the next level? Or why do I approach leadership this way? Or why do I want that next job? Or why is it not okay that I haven't been promoted? Whatever those things are, dig a little deeper and then figure out where that's coming from. And you're almost always going to be better for it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Advice. It's great. And, the one thing I would recommend anybody to read is Carol Dweck's work about fixed and growth mindset.
Yes.
It's a real rule of thumb for me. And I won't go into it, but I urge, followers to just look into some of her work. It's great.
Oh, I totally agree. It is, it is life-changing if you've never considered what she teaches before with the growth and the fixed mindset. And it's kind of a piece of everything I write about and talk about, because you can't talk about these concepts about leadership and growth and being happier and more content and peaceful and all of those things without believing what she talks about. So yes, I definitely recommend Carol Dweck's work. Okay, so next question. What do you think? So you've had these great leadership positions at companies and been pretty successful as far as someone else would see from the outside. What do you think made you successful early on and getting these positions and getting another position like that? What do you think were some of the traits that kept you getting those, and then as you were working, keeping you peaceful and happy along the way?
Yeah, and gosh, that's a big question.
I know.
So, when I was younger, I had this drive, and I know where it came from. As I said, being brought up the way I was, and I remember through my own personal sports career, I just wanted a career in sport, and I didn't care what that was. And again, I was really driven, and I wasn't academic. Okay, so I come from a place of commercial acumen, business minded, but very driven. And I remember I achieved something I always wanted to achieve by quite an early age, and that was to run my own sports centre. And I achieved that by the sort of mid to late 20s. And then I moved into a corporate sector, and I ended up having, through my career, leadership roles around head of corporate social responsibility, head of inclusion and diversity. But actually, when I look back at the thread, I go that everything maps back to my values, which is empowering others, bringing people along the journey with me, making sure equality and fairness is right there. So if you take that and look at it in a sports center environment, it's enabling people from all walks of life to experience some form of sport, whether the diverse groups, whether it's people with disabilities, older people, whatever it is. We brought people in to the sports centre and ensured that we had a variety of exercises and activities for everybody, inclusive of everyone. But I was probably, again, I'm going to use the word naive. I was probably naive back then that's what it was in terms of my purpose and my values. And then as I walked into leadership roles around CSR, I realized that, again, what am I doing? I'm upskilling and empowering communities and, enabling them to flourish and have a better life in communities. And again, they were target groups there: people with disabilities, young people, youth, and older people. And then moving more recently, the last 10 to 15 years, into leading inclusion and diversity. Again, it still maps back to the unfairness and the inequality that I saw in my early 30s when I came into the corporate world, and that drove me. So I think, there's that I have this drive, and this drive is led by the passion and the belief, and also seeing things through to the end as well. And I don't want to give it up until I've achieved it. But I will just say, again, I highly recommend that do some work around know your purpose, know your values. I knew mine early on, and I've led a very interesting career that probably a bit unconsciously as well, but probably quite unconsciously, knowing that I have led that career that closely links back to my purpose and values.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks for all the detail. So I have another question for you about, I'm going to tell you what I remember you told me and some other people years ago about advice that you'd have for someone searching for a meaningful career where they can use their strengths. I wanted to see what you had to say about that. And then when you're done, I'm going to tell you what I remember you telling me a long time ago. It was great advice. Yeah.
All right. It's a really interesting word, isn't it? Strengths. I believe, and this is probably a recent belief. And remember, belief is not always the truth. Your beliefs are your beliefs, and you hold them. I do have a belief that if you're really good at something because you're passionate about it, you will find strengths in that. And again, I truly have a belief I've had a meaningful career, and because I've really found what my purpose is. And you've got to be happy doing it, and your work needs to be aligned to what you want to do. When you want to do something, your strengths will follow, because you will throw yourself into that because you want to do it. Therefore, you will build a set of strengths. And you know what? You could be strong at something but not enjoy it. And that's the double-edged sword. Do you want to follow your strengths? Or do you want to follow your meaning, and find a meaningful career? Because even if you don't find as many strengths in that, oh my goodness, the amount you'll throw into that, your strengths will build quickly and greater.
I love that, because you're right. If you aren't, so I remember I got my undergrad degree in marketing and economics, and I didn't know what to study. I wanted to study in college. I knew I wanted to go to college and get a degree, but everyone would say to me, "Well, you're great with people, so you should be in sales." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's what I'll do." I'm good with people. That's a strength of mine, but I hate sales. Marketing at the time was more sales. And now it's more creative, and it's way different with the digital age. But back then it was, if you're in marketing, you're selling something. And I got about 2/3 through my education and thought, I don't want to get a sales job. I want to teach people. I want to be in training. I want to be in learning. I want to do all of that. And I thought, oh no, I'm about to graduate and this is not what I want to do. So I ended up I finished that degree and said, I'm just going to finish. Then I ended up getting a master's in teaching because I knew that's the path I wanted to go down. But that's a great example of saying, I'm strong at something, so I'm just going to follow this, instead of saying, wait, I'm strong, but I'm not passionate about this. How can I take what I'm passionate about and then using the good connecting to people? And if someone had explained it, I figured it out on my own. It took me a little bit longer, but if someone had explained it the way you just explained it to me when I was 22, I would have said, oh, wait a minute, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing with these podcasts, so that people can hear just even that one phrase or sentence you said and go, wait, okay. This is something I've been teaching my kids too, because I finally learned it, but being able to do that early on just means you're going to get to be so much happier and just have so much more to contribute throughout your life, because you're not going down the wrong path. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing here. And then you can empower or, like you were saying, uplift and all of those things, that whatever it is, the path you want to go down, you're going to be able to do more of all of those things because you're on the right path. I'm not saying you're going to find it the first time, but keep going towards those things and it's going to reveal itself sooner. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I remember the advice, and it wasn't basically on your strength, but one of the questions I'd asked you years ago was, what advice do you have for just in general in the corporate world for people that are trying to succeed and be more successful? And I don't know if you remember, you said, and I share this with other people now, the people that I've mentored over the years, I have said, you told the group, you should ask for feedback often. And that's something I continued to do. I don't know if you remember doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said, and I had never had a leader ask or tell me, ask for feedback, or they're always giving you feedback about your performance. And, because it's built into the performance management, or you have to do it once a year, whatever it is. But to be able to do that without people around you, your friends, your coworkers, your family, your, people that report to you or you report to, and say, hey, I wanted to get a little feedback about this, or here's what I saw, can I get your feedback about this? That has done a ton for me, because it's just it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be this more meeting to give our feedback about each other. It's just like, I would like your feedback on something, whether it's an idea or something you did or said or something they observed. But it's a very simple way. It doesn't have to be this massive conversation. It could just be a couple of sentences. But it's great, because you think you're coming off a certain way, or you think one person might have this feedback for me, and then someone else that was in the same meeting has different feedback for me, but both of those are going to be helpful. Whether you use them or not, you're getting more information, and who couldn't be better for having more information about how you're perceived? So that was a gift.
Yeah, I remember, and I've built on that more recently. And this is a really risky thing to do, but I really challenge people to do this. When you're in the flow of a meeting, and you stop that meeting and you say, "How am I coming across to you right now?" Imagine doing that, and how am I coming across to you right now? That's in the moment. And it's really, really big thing to do, right? And practice it on, when you're in your comfort zone, and then try it when you sort of get a bit more into your stretch zone. And then the other thing I did, I've been doing some research around Nancy Klein work, which is phenomenal. It's all around listening, and it's all around time to think. And one thing that she says is, what else? What else? So when you're asking for that feedback, it's kind of a little bit awkward, maybe, that I'm asking you for feedback. But then when you go a little bit deeper, what else? So the recipient is going, well, you kind of do this too.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Well, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. What else? And then you start to get to the truth. And I love that, because those two examples are really pretty bold things to do, but you really get to the truth. And if you go back to the Carol Dweck work around growth mindset, you will hear things that maybe you don't want to hear, or it's lovely, you do want to hear, but whatever you hear, take it and cherish it and work on it. Whether it's critical feedback or positive feedback, really cherish it. And you know what? If somebody gives you good feedback, great feedback, take the applause, take it and say, thank you. Just thank you. Thank you.
Yes, because they're going out on a limb to be truthful with you. And you are, I love that, and what else, because it's just 3 simple words. Instead of, you don't dig, tell me more about that. You can just, all you have to remember is, and what else, and what else. And you're making them safe to give it to you. And you, like you said, you're going to get to the bottom. I think this is great for parenting too, and friendships, but especially in the workforce, and it's probably not something that's done very often, but because people are always thinking about the next thing, it's a gift for you and for that person. And then it's teaching them too, to dig a little deeper, to offer that feedback for people, even unsolicited, when you can say, I have some feedback for you. Can I share? And it's just incentivizing everyone to go a little deeper so that they can get to more of the heart of things more quickly too. Like, wouldn't it be nice to get to that conversation within 20 minutes and with those 3 words, as opposed to having another meeting in 6 more months or 2 more months or whatever it's going to be? I mean, then you can just be that much better and growing sooner. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and if it's being unconscious and conscious of your own behaviors, right? And always question yourself, how does your behavior impact others? Because if you don't really know, you don't know how you're coming across and you don't know how you're being received. So the question is, how does your behavior impact others?
I love that. I love that question. I'm taking copious notes. This is a great conversation. Okay, so I have one final question for you, Vikki. Is there anything you wish you had learned earlier in your life or career?
Wow, I love this question. Along the way, I guess I actually cherish my naivety. I really do. I was quite naive to the whole inequality thing that's just driven me, I guess. But what that brought is potentially a lack of maturity. And what I mean by that is, when I came across leaders, um, I I wish I learnt earlier on to just see leaders as human beings. Just see leaders like they're somebody else. Do not be subservient to them. Do not bow down to them. Do not be in fear of them. Just be yourself. And, just because they've got a leader title. And it's really interesting. Now I'm a leader. I don't see myself as that. But then all of a sudden, I'm looking at people lower down in the organization looking up to me, and I'm like, hey mate, just be yourself. And of course there's this big tag that is sort of attached to you, leader. And if you are a leader listening to this, if you are a leader, break those barriers down quick. Just bring your authenticity on in, because we're all equal. And all they are job titles, right? But just get rid of it, and just bring the equality in, because therefore what you're bringing in is authenticity, showing a bit of vulnerability, and that is the real you. The other thing, the other thing when I was thinking about this question is, just just don't worry as much as you worry. And my brothers say to me, Vikki, you worry all the time. Stop worrying. Oh, no, I'm worrying about this. I'm worrying about that. And one of my brothers said, 90% of your worries, Vikki, never come true. I'm like, God, 90% of my worries. What am I doing to myself? Think about your energy levels and think about those that where you're channeling your energy. Because if you're channeling your energy into worrying too much, you're going to get tired. You're going to use that energy up where you could use that energy into such a better place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like people, right? Those energy zappers. Mm-hmm. You choose who you want to be around. Do not let people or things or yourself zap your energy. Use your energy levels wisely.
It's so funny that your brother told you that, because I have 3 brothers, and I remember going to high school, and he was a senior in high school. I was a freshman, and I was walking in. I don't know why. This is such a clear memory for me. I was walking in, and I was worried about how I looked. I was worried about what people are going to think about me. And he looked at me and he said, Julie, why do you're always caring so much about what everyone's thinking? What? It's just stop. But it's such more of a women's thing, and I think men are so much better at it, which is so why we need to have that energy around us so that we can be balanced. Because if we just spent all our time with women that were worrying about everything all the time, we wouldn't be as creative as we needed to be. I think it's important to have that balance, because men will just say, I'm just going to do this and let the chips fall where they may, because they either are believing what they're saying, they think it's right, and they're just not caring and worrying as much about the decisions they're making. They care about them, but they're like, if people don't like it, or if it's not the right thing and I make a mistake, I'll just make another decision. But women are just think innately more worried about being judged. and obviously about pleasing people. I just think it's the way we're brought up. But the sooner we can have less of that, and I don't even mean to be more masculine, to be more macho. I just mean to take some of that good stuff, lots of the good stuff that men have, and say, I'm gonna be more like that, because they're not worrying half as much.
Yeah.
And it's unnecessary, and they get there quicker. I think, like you were saying, you look at inequality in these corporations, and lots of men leaders, not enough women, or not enough diversity, and not as much inclusion as you want. But it's like, why is that? Why are there all these men in this position? Oh, because they're just going for what they want, not worrying as much, not having needing everything to be perfect until they go for that role they want, or whatever it is. I think that's part of it.
I agree. I do agree, and also they're working in an environment as a dominant group. Okay, so if you look at the non-dominant groups, so the fewer women up there with the dominant group, or the fewer people of ethnic backgrounds up there with the dominant group of white people, or people of disabilities with able-bodied people, and you know what the problem is when you're experiencing being part of a non-dominant group, it really is hard, because when you live in a dominant group, it's easier, it's more comfortable, you're rubbing shoulders together, and I really urge people to just try not to think about they're the only woman in the room, or and there's a great book called The Loudest Duck, Laura Liswood, and she talks about the elephant and the mouse. Now think about the elephant, the big thing that's got the presence, doesn't have to worry about where they're treading. Now if you're the mouse, the non-dominant part of the group, you look at the skills you're building. You're negotiating around the elephant. You're flexing your whole your weight and your body and your mind and everything about you. You're just literally negotiating and flexing, whereas the elephant doesn't need to do that. And that is a really interesting metaphor when you start to bring that into the workplace, and you go, I'm the only woman in here, or I'm the only Black person in here, or I'm the only wheelchair user in here. Therefore, what experience and what skill sets do you have over the dominant group who doesn't have to worry about it?
Yeah. What's the name of the book? Is The Loudest?
The Loudest Duck. It's
Duck.
Laura Liswood, and it's awesome. And it talks about your grandma and the biases that you bring into the world, which is about your upbringing. But the elephant and the mouse chapter is my favorite.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I'm going to reference that in the show notes. Cool. I hadn't heard about that one. I thought I read them all. Well, thank you. I love that metaphor, and you're right. Having to think about the strengths you need to use when you're in those groups that you're not comfortable being in. That's a really great way for people that are trying to climb the corporate ladder or be successful, have a promotion, whatever it is. It's a great way to think about it, and it's a great reference. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you so much for all of your insight today, Vikki. It was great talking to you. I'm going to be quoting some of the things you said in our conversation today in my newsletter when I release this podcast, because it's so many good little nuggets, and you're very wise, and it's so nice to talk to someone that has a great outlook on leadership and the values that you have and you're bringing to the workplace. They're just very inspiring. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you, Julie, for putting things like this on. I think we're all in it together, especially times like COVID. And this is great. And I've really enjoyed talking with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you love this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.